My name is Alexander Moore, and I am 62 years old. For most of my adult life, I learned to stay quiet and let people believe whatever was easiest for them. That included my own son. For 15 years, he believed I was a poor man who never achieved much. And I allowed that belief to live. My son Daniel. I was nothing more than an aging warehouse worker. A man who drove an old pickup truck with rust on the doors, wore cheap work pants and worn boots, and lived modestly because he had no other option. I brought grocery store flowers to family dinners and refused expensive wine, saying I could not tell the difference anyway. Daniel accepted this without hesitation. What Daniel never knew was that I owned the warehouse where I supposedly worked. Not just that one, but 47 warehouses across 12 states. I founded a logistics company decades earlier after selling my first small business when I was in my early 30s. Over the years, that company grew quietly, without publicity, until its valuation reached more than $70 million. I lived simply not because I was forced to, but because I chose to. Daniel married Rebecca, an interior designer who lived through appearances, trends, and social approval. From the moment she entered my life, she viewed my home as something outdated. She never saw it as a place filled with memories. To her, it was a project waiting to happen. Slowly, the language around my house began to change. It stopped being your house and became the family home, then our future property. I noticed the shift clearly during Thanksgiving dinner. Rebecca casually announced that once they took over the house, they would renovate everything. She suggested I downsize to something more suitable for my income level. Daniel nodded along. No one asked what I wanted. No one considered that it was still my home. Soon after, Rebecca posted photos of my living room on social media. She framed the post as a renovation challenge and described me as someone who resisted modern value. The comments were cruel. People mocked me, calling me an old man holding on to the past. Rebecca showed the comments to Daniel as proof that professionals agreed with her. Neither of them realized I was watching silently. The situation escalated when Rebecca's parents visited my house. They walked through each room like inspectors, pointing out imagined problems with the foundation, the roof, and the heating system. They discussed rising property values while speaking over me, as if I were not there. That evening, Daniel finally spoke directly. He told me that transferring the house to him and Rebecca would be the smartest financial decision. He said the property was too much for me to maintain. He mentioned that they had spoken to lawyers and financial planners. He spoke calmly, confidently, as if he were helping me face reality. The next morning, an email arrived. It was written in polite legal language, carefully disguised as concern. The proposal suggested I deed my house to Daniel while being allowed to stay temporarily in a guest room. If I refused, they would pursue alternative legal options to ensure proper property management. At that moment, something became painfully clear. My son believed I was weak. He believed I could not stop them. He believed I would quietly step aside. I did not argue. I did not explain. I made phone calls. First, I contacted my attorney and asked her to prepare documents immediately. Then I called the CEO of my logistics company and instructed him to accelerate the sale of the warehouse facility where Daniel's employer operated. A full cash transaction was prepared and closed within 48 hours. Everything was legal. Everything was final. Next, I transferred my house into a family trust and formalized what had always been true. Daniel and Rebecca were not owners. They had been living in the guest apartment on my property for 2 years, rent-free. Their stay had always been temporary, even if they convinced themselves otherwise. The confrontation happened at a dinner party Rebecca organized shortly after. She called it a celebration. The house was filled with wealthy friends, expensive wine, and loud confidence. In front of everyone, Daniel and Rebecca announced their plans as if the decision had already been made. People congratulated them. Glasses were raised. I stayed seated. When I finally spoke, the room went quiet. I asked Daniel how much he believed the house was worth. Then I asked how he thought I had paid for it. When I told him I paid cash decades ago, he laughed nervously. Then I told him who I really was. I explained that I owned the logistics company many of them depended on. I showed them the accounts, the documents, and the numbers. I told them the warehouse where Daniel's company operated had already been sold. I explained that shipping costs would rise immediately. The consequences had already begun. The room emptied faster than I expected. Within days after that dinner, the consequences began to spread faster than I expected. News travels quickly in the circles my son and his wife valued so highly. Rebecca's carefully built online image started to collapse. Clients canceled projects without explanations. Messages went unanswered. Invitations disappeared. Her social media following dropped almost overnight, and with it, her confidence. At the same time, Daniel's professional life began to unravel. His employer questioned him about rising logistics costs and undisclosed connections. Meetings were scheduled. Conversations became tense. For the first time in his life, Daniel realized that credentials and confidence could not solve everything. I did not interfere. I did not soften the impact. I let reality do its work. 3 weeks passed in silence. Then, one early morning, Daniel came to my house alone. He looked older somehow, as if exhaustion had finally stripped away the confidence he once wore so easily. He asked if we could talk. We sat on the back porch, the same place where I once taught him how to fix a fishing line when he was a boy. He asked me why I never told him the truth, why I let him believe I was struggling. I answered honestly. I told him I wanted to see who he would become when he thought I had nothing to offer him. I wanted to know if he valued me as a father or as an asset. Daniel did not argue. He simply lowered his head and admitted that he had failed. Later that week, Rebecca came with him. No luxury car, no designer clothes, no rehearsed confidence. She looked nervous, but determined. She asked to speak, and I let her. She admitted that she had judged me based on my appearance, my habits, and my silence. She admitted that she wanted the house not because they needed it, but because it symbolized success to others. She did not ask for money. She did not ask for forgiveness. She asked for the chance to learn how to live without entitlement. They told me they had moved into a small apartment, that they had taken jobs beneath what they once believed they deserved, that budgeting, cooking, and paying bills without help felt humiliating at first, but slowly became grounding. They were learning, for the first time, what things actually cost. That evening, we cooked dinner together. It was nothing impressive. The food was overcooked. The kitchen was messy. But there were no phones, no performances, no carefully chosen words. Just honesty. I watched my son that night and saw something I had not seen in years. Humility. I did not give them money. I did not offer shortcuts. I did not rescue them, because some lessons cannot be taught with generosity. They can only be learned through loss. Today, I still live the same way. I still drive my old truck. I still work every day. I still run my company quietly. Nothing about my life changed, except my relationship with my son. He now understands that wealth is not measured by appearances, houses, or status. It is measured by independence, discipline, and responsibility. Sometimes, the greatest gift a father can give is not protection, but distance. Distance from entitlement. Distance from assumptions. Distance from the illusion that success is owed rather than earned. That lesson cost my son his pride, but it gave him back his character. And that, in the end, was worth far more than any house.